The screaming echoed through the dark hallway of Rikers Island like something from a nightmare. The lights flickered, alarms blared, and correction officers ran toward the commotion. Inside cell block C-95, 2 inmates were fighting for their lives while dozens of others pounded on the metal bars, shouting and cheering. But the part that froze everyone in place was the sound of someone choking. Deep, rough, desperate. When Officer Daniels looked through the small glass window of the cell, he saw something that would haunt him forever. A man was pinned on the floor, his face turning purple, while another inmate wrapped a bedsheet around his neck and pulled with everything he had. Others in the cell didn't stop him. They didn't even move. They just watched. No one screamed for help. No one said a word. It was as if the violence was normal, just another day inside America's most feared jail. Then the inmate doing the choking turned his head and stared directly at the officer on the other side of the window with the coldest eyes imaginable and smiled. Everything went silent, and that was the moment Officer Daniels realized something terrible. Something worse than the fight was about to happen. But what happened next, no one saw coming. Before that terrifying day, life inside Rikers Island already felt like a storm waiting to explode. To understand why that moment became the breaking point, you need to know how everything began, long before the bedsheet, the purple face, and the smile that chilled the entire cell block. Jacob Miller had never expected to end up at Rikers. He wasn't a gang member, he wasn't a violent criminal, and he had never been inside a jail before. He was a 28-year-old delivery truck driver from Brooklyn who loved basketball, his mom's cooking, and quiet weekends. But one bad night changed everything. He was accused of taking part in a robbery. He didn't commit. His court date was months away. But until then, he was sent to Rikers Island, the place people called Hell's Waiting Room. From the moment he arrived, Jacob knew something wasn't right. The air smelled of sweat and bleach. The halls echoed with shouts, banging, and insults. Correction officers walked fast, their hands always near their belts, and the inmates stared with hungry eyes, studying every newcomer. Jacob felt small, like a piece of meat thrown into a lion's cage. On his first day, an older inmate whispered to him, "Keep your head down. Don't look at nobody too long. Don't try making friends. And whatever you do, don't go near cell block C, 95 unless you have to." Jacob didn't understand why, but he listened. His first week was quiet, at least quiet for Rikers. He kept to himself, ate fast, slept with one eye open, and avoided any trouble. But trouble at Rikers didn't need an invitation. It came to you whether you asked for it or not. One morning during chow time, Jacob walked to get his tray when suddenly someone bumped him hard from behind. His tray almost fell. "Watch where you walk, rookie," a tall inmate said. His name was Marcus Reed, one of the most feared men in the jail. He was known for stabbing someone with a toothbrush sharpened into a weapon. The room fell silent as Jacob stared at him. He knew one wrong word could end very badly. "I'm sorry, man," Jacob said quietly. Marcus stepped closer. "You better be. This ain't your grandma's kitchen." A soft laugh spread through the room. Jacob felt his hands shake. He took his tray and walked away while Marcus stared at him with that same dangerous smile people feared. After that, Marcus started watching him. Not talking, not threatening, just watching. Every meal, every rec time, every lineup. Jacob felt like prey. 2 days later, something worse happened. Jacob returned to his cell to find his mattress slashed open and his clothes thrown across the floor. His little bag of soaked toothpaste and snacks was gone. Someone had raided his stuff. When he asked the officer on duty for help, the man didn't even look up from his phone. "Welcome to Rikers," the officer said. "Figure it out." Jacob knew exactly who to blame, but he kept silent. He wasn't stupid. Snitching inside Rikers was a death wish. Still, the message was clear. Marcus was testing him. But Jacob wasn't the only one Marcus was targeting. The entire block was slowly falling under his control. He had a small group of loyal inmates who followed every order he gave. They took food from others, controlled the phones, and even demanded rent from weaker inmates. Everyone lived in fear of getting on Marcus' bad side. One night, the yelling started. It wasn't normal yelling. This was something different. Something sharp, desperate. Jacob ran to the bars of his cell and looked out. Down the hallway, 2 inmates were fighting. One was bleeding from the head, the other trying to slam him against the wall. Officers rushed in and broke it up, but the cause was obvious to everyone. Gang wars. Rumors spread fast. Marcus had gotten into a fight with another gang leader named Rico Torres. Both wanted control over C-95, and both were willing to shed blood for it. That's when everything inside the block became worse. Every day felt like walking through a minefield. One wrong look, one wrong step, and you could get jumped, stabbed, or worse. Jacob tried his best to stay out of the way, but Rikers wasn't a place where you could hide forever. If trouble wanted you, it found you, and it did. On the morning, everything exploded. Jacob woke up to the sound of metal clanging. He looked through the bars and saw Marcus arguing with Rico in the hallway. Both had their crews behind them. The tension was so thick, it felt like the walls themselves were shaking. Officers yelled at them to back up, but neither man moved. "You crossed the line, Marcus," Rico said. Marcus smiled. "I'll cross your face next." The officers rushed in, but it was too late. Fists flew. Bodies slammed into the walls. Men shouted. Within seconds, the hallway turned into a battlefield. Jacob watched as chaos spread through the entire block. Doors rattled, inmates screamed, and officers called for backup. Jacob backed away from the bars, praying the fight wouldn't spill into a cell. But as soon as the officers regained control, Marcus did something that surprised everyone. He pointed directly at Jacob. "That one," Marcus said. "He's with them." Jacob froze. "What? No, I'm not with anybody." But it didn't matter. Marcus had spoken, and in Rikers, his word was as good as law. That night, the quiet before the storm finally broke. Jacob was moved to a different cell C-95-12, after an officer told him there was a mix-up. But Jacob knew better. This wasn't a mix-up. This was a setup. When he entered the cell, he saw 3 other inmates inside. One of them, a big man with tattoos on his neck, stared at him like he was food. "You're the new guy Marcus wants," he said. Jacob's heart almost stopped. The lights went out, and that was when the real nightmare began. The biggest inmate lunged. Jacob tried to dodge, but the man grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Another inmate grabbed a bedsheet and twisted it into a rope. Jacob knew what was coming. He screamed for help. The others laughed. The hallway was dark, the officers far away, and no one would hear him in time. The bedsheet tightened around his throat, squeezing the air from his lungs. Jacob kicked. He clawed. He begged. But the big man only pulled harder. Jacob's vision started turning white. Suddenly, the small glass window on the cell door lit up as Officer Daniels ran to the door. He shouted at them to stop. The inmates didn't listen. The bedsheet tightened more. Jacob felt his heartbeat slowing. And then the man choking him turned his head toward the officer and smiled. But before Officer Daniels could call for backup, something else happened, something violent, fast, and shocking. Another inmate in the cell reached under his mattress and pulled out a sharpened metal shank. He rushed toward Jacob. The sharpened metal shank came down fast. So fast Jacob barely had time to scream. He rolled to the side at the last second. The blade sliced in the air where his neck had been just a heartbeat before. The inmate holding the shank growled in frustration, gripped it tighter, and raised it again. Jacob tried to crawl backward, but his foot slipped on the cold, concrete floor. "Hold him still," the tattooed inmate shouted. The man choking Jacob dropped the bedsheet rope and helped pin Jacob's arms. Jacob kicked wildly, his lungs burning, his throat throbbing where the sheet had been minutes earlier. Officer Daniels slammed his fist against the window, screaming for backup, but inside that cell, no one cared. The inmates were in control, and Jacob was seconds from dying. The shank came down again. Jacob twisted, and this time the blade cut across his shoulder. A hot, burning pain shot through his entire body. He let out a cry, so loud it echoed through the hallway. Blood soaked through his torn shirt. The inmate smirked, lifted the shank slowly, and then a huge metal bang shook the entire block, aimed straight at Jacob's chest. His cell door jerked open. for officers stormed in with batons, shield, and pepper spray, yelling for everyone to get on the floor.